Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
Hello, friends, and welcome to a Friday edition of your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. And of course, this is a nice, warm July 29th, 2022. And from east of Woodward, I'm Jer Stays.
Hello there from west of Woodward. It is once again Devon O'Reilly.
You are alive. The west of Woodward is not taking you.
No, I'm alive, albeit on much less sleep than I'm used to.
Why is that, sir?
Well, I've been off on my special project, Jer, as you so discreetly mentioned, and that was having a child. So I come to you now on the other side of fatherhood.
Oh, wow. You are now a dad. Dad O'Reilly.
Yes. Hashtag dad life. So I'm looking forward to embracing all of the things that make a dad, whatever that may be. So I may or may not, I'm just breaking this now as I'm thinking about it, but I may or may not start sharing some dad life segments as we banter about and talk about the differences in life being a cool dad, hopefully. I hope I'm a cool dad.
You know, for me, I've always kind of envisioned you and your wife as that couple that kind of just grabs the baby and they just kind of go with you, you know?
I'd like to be. I mean, God, man, it's tough. The first, we're 2 weeks in at this point exactly. And I mean, it has just been a wild ride of, no routines, and you're just trying to figure out what to do to keep this thing alive. So it's been pretty wild. But I will say, to your point, we did finally get out. We had a friend come over, a close friend, and watch the baby for a little while. And Melissa and I went out and we got dinner at Mint 29, which is our favorite restaurant in Dearborn. Real cool. I think I've talked about it before, right over there off of Michigan Avenue in Monroe. They've got a really cool new patio with a pergola. It's really built out. Looks like something in downtown Detroit. Really cool space. So we got our little cocktails and dinner out together. So that was our first foray into that, and I hope to do that more often.
Well, there's many listeners who do live in the suburbs and even in Detroit neighborhoods that have little downtowns within them. And there is something absolutely wonderful about those clutch go-to restaurants that are right there, like something that gives you a good time, whether it's a restaurant or a bar. Like I think about over in the park, I think Atwater Brewery, I think about like the 313 Wine Place over there. There's places all over this place, Ferndale, Royal Oak, where, maybe it's not like a huge night out, but it's sometimes just so good to get out of the house, even if it's just like a few minutes away.
Yeah, and we've got a very supportive family structure. Both of our parents are around here. And so, yeah, we're thankful and blessed to have that. And yes, we're definitely gonna pop out and still see the sights, still go places.
Well, make sure to share your dad life tips to dailydetroit@gmail.com or on social media, because I know from talking to listeners, there are other folks in your line of life now.
Yeah, I seem to have seen tons of baby announcements. Even some people I know, some colleagues and some friends have had babies all in the last, let's say, few weeks. So looking forward to forming a new parent community here and maybe incorporating some of that into to Daily Detroit, as we haven't done before. So that'll be exciting.
Well, I will say that I'm still drinking.
So am I, Jer. What do you got?
I've got the poor man Tom Collins, meaning that is Sprite and gin.
Simple 2-ingredient cocktail. We love that here at Daily Detroit. Is there a particular gin you're going with?
I am a big fan of just having that 2 James gin.
Mm-hmm.
I had a bottle of that around for a while. I just like to try different gins because at the end of the day, like a good gin actually matters. Like you don't want to cheap out too much on your gin because, look, I'm drinking with Sprite, so it's kind of overpowered with sugar anyway. But it does make a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. In a different way than vodka, for instance, vodka I think matters less. And you might say, the goal of a good vodka is really just to recede and let the other flavors take over. But a good gin can really make the flavors of a cocktail or a drink that you have. So it is important. And actually, Jer, I have a gin drink myself.
Ooh.
I think this might have been mentioned on the show before, but it's a new kind of entry into the alcohol market locally. It's been around in Europe for a while. It's called the Finnish long drink.
Ooh, we're going to have to rank these.
Yeah, there's 4 different flavors. There's like a cranberry, there's a traditional. Of course, I went with the strong citrus, so kicks up the ABV from 5% to 8.5%, which is more my speed. But it's really, really good, and you have to kind of look for what that flavor is. It was apparently started in the 1952 Summer Olympic Games in Finland when they needed a drink to serve quickly and in large quantities to people who were coming for the Olympics. So they created this drink, which is kind of it's ginny. It's got natural flavors of grapefruit and juniper. It's carbonated. It's really good. It's much more substantial than a seltzer, but it does kind of drink like a seltzer. It drinks somewhere between a seltzer and an actual cocktail, and I really enjoy it.
You know, Robin Runyon from Urbanize introduced me to the long drink, and I am a big fan. We're going to have to do this ranking, you know, whether it's in the, you know, temporary basement studio we're putting together as we get our retail space together, because, you know, we really needed to get a studio space going. So we'll do the temporary and the full, but we will do a temporary studio tasting of the long drinks 100% because that needs to happen. This seems to be the drink of the season.
It does seem to be that way. And they have, like I said, they have different flavors. I got mine at Westbourne Market in Dearborn. I know they have them in different places. If you go on the website, I think they have one of those maps where you can find out where to get them locally. The founders people are investors in this. And I believe that's kind of what brought this here is you have some local investment in the long drink. So
interesting.
Look for it at your local purveyor of alcoholic beverages.
You know I keep it cool. I prefer to stay in the cut. Don't want no attention on me when I'm trying to shake the blues up off me. But then I saw your face. It caused my heart to race.
We've got to talk teal, man. We've got to talk about the bring back the teal. It has just lit up social media. Lots of strong feelings around the teal, one way or another.
Well, before I give away how I feel about this is very nostalgic, especially to millennials. If you're a millennial, however you want to define that, but let's say between, 83 or 84 and, early 90s, you remember these jerseys distinctly and they mean something to you. It's, going to the Palace, watching the Pistons there. These jerseys embodied the 90s. These jerseys were so 90s. And it brings back memories, whether good or bad. So yes, I'm not surprised that people have thoughts on them. And you actually did a poll for Daily Detroit on the jerseys, and it seemed pretty conflicted, although it looks like teal did win out, right?
Oh, teal went out. About 52% of people are team teal. 31.5% are like, no. And then about, 16, 17% were like, meh, this really isn't like a big thing for me. I do see a majority of people liking to see the teal. I will note that the teal is only coming back for like 10 games. It's like a classic throwback jersey as opposed to a full transition. I mean, for me, I'm not against the teal. I'm all for a good stunt jersey, right? Like I'm a big fan of those, but I am of the Bad Boys era, which is pre-teal. So I don't have as much affinity. I think that's the difference in age gap, I think. Because I am, as some like to say, have written in that I am a geriatric millennial.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a part of it. And I think that's where you're getting some of that pushback. I mean, I think I had a Grant Hill teal jersey. I might have had a Jerry Stackhouse teal jersey. So I've experienced these jerseys before when I was a kid. And, I think it's important that you mention this is just an alternate. Every team in the NBA, every team has some kind of interesting, kind of crazy alternate. The Memphis Grizzlies also have a wild teal jersey that's almost crazier than ours. A lot of these NBA teams are doing 90s throwback jerseys because 90s are a thing now. So it totally made sense. And only for 10 games, it's not like there's no reason to get bent out of shape about this, honestly. Like if this is really affecting you and you're really upset about this, you kind of got to get over it. We're talking about 10 games here. We'll go back to the red, white, and blue. No one's trying to say that we should change our colors permanently. Red, white, and blue is where we won our championships. But why not switch it up a little bit? We haven't been good in a while. So, hey, it's something different, something interesting. It's going to sell a heck of a lot of jerseys. I'm sure of that. So I'm excited to get my hands on some teal merchandise for the Pistons this year.
I wouldn't be that mad about a switch. It's good to shake things up. The Pistons brand is what it is. I will ask, though. I have to ask. I mean, all right, the teal, but what's with that flaming horse, dude?
Horsepower. The horsepower.
You're all about that, huh?
So when they added the horse in like the mid to late 90s, that was their thing is now the Pistons have horsepower. So that is the horse, which created the mascot Hooper. So we all know and love Hooper. If you go to Pistons games,
Hooper doesn't look like the flaming horse.
No, he's a cartoonized version. But the whole reason we got a horse in the first place, the whole reason Hooper exists was because of those jerseys and adding the flaming angry horse. You couldn't put Hooper on a jersey. That would be a little comical and no one would take us seriously.
I kind of like it. I mean, no one would take it seriously, but you could do like kids wear, like Hooper pajamas.
Yeah. So yeah, Hooper, I mean, basically, so people should know, yeah, Hooper is really the embodiment of that horse on the teal jerseys. We didn't have a horse running around as a mascot before that.
I had no idea. I'm going to mention this downtown story because, it's the skyline of the city. And so everybody's going to have feelings about it. There is a new rendering for the Joe Louis Arena spot for the apartments and residential that's going to go there. It seems like every time they're like upping the resolution on the rendering. Like the first renderings we saw look straight out of like MS Paint. And now these are starting to get a little bit clearer, a lot more of that glass block kind of style with like the pedestal. Hot or not?
Well, Jer, this is a little nuanced. On its face, I would feel silly trying to argue that this is hot. It's uninspiring. It's pretty blah as far as design goes, but it is something. Now, they are building something, and it's going up, I think, 25 stories, so nice. It'll add to the skyline. But a couple things I want to point out here. One, I've seen mentioned now that in the renderings, there's a lot of green space, and people have kind of been complaining about all this green space. It seems like it's just kind of a tower in a giant field.
Yeah, it does kind of look a little alone there.
Right. It looks kind of silly in the rendering. And now what I've heard is that's because that green space is eventually going to become more development, perhaps another tower, perhaps, hotel, additional mixed use space. So the rendering kind of leaves out the additional developments, and there will be more to come. But for now, it's just going to be the one tower. So it might look a little lonely at first.
Okay. Whenever I hear the word perhaps in downtown development,
yeah, okay.
I get real sketch, man. I get sus because there have been so many perhaps over the years. Perhaps we were going to have Monroe blocks, and now we have like a roller skating rink and a movie theater. We're
never having Monroe blocks. That's not.
I think everybody needs to kiss that. I mean, and I actually was really intrigued by the Monroe blocks project and the urbanity of it and the design of it, but I don't think it's ever happening.
I don't think Dan's going to dip into his own coffers for another $1.5 billion anytime soon.
Which kind of leads us to the next thing, talking about that the city council has approved 5-4, the tax incentives, so they can get financing for the Hudson's Tower, another $60 million.
Yes. God, this has been such a saga for a long time now.
It was a saga before you were a father.
Yeah, exactly. Way back when. I think the Bedrock thought this was going to be pretty easy to get. They've gotten them before. It turned out to be a whole back and forth, created a lot of drama. Ultimately, they're going to get the tax breaks. I do think it's the right thing for multiple reasons we've talked about before, but I'm glad that this is getting done. It all but assures that the Hudson site will come to fruition in its current glory, whatever that means. I mean, even though it's already been kind of tweaked a little bit, I think we're going to get a 600 and something foot tower, whatever the last renderings are. I think we're going to get all of that. So excited for that to continue, and there's no hiccups in that, and we'll get closer and closer to topping that off in the next year or so.
There's a couple things I want to bring out in this. Number one, Council President Mary Sheffield, specifically in council, said, and this is according to Urbanized Detroit, in a perfect world, we would not need to offer tax abatements to developers to attract projects to the city of Detroit. Unfortunately, Detroit has one of the highest tax rates in the nation amongst other major cities, and putting us at a competitive disadvantage. So tax abatements are a symptom of a much larger problem. I am so glad to be hearing this. I mean, we have been beating this drum for a long time. Our episodes were literally cited in city council legislative report about the tax rates and doing split tax and reform. To me, the council president saying this means we might actually get serious about wholesale reform to make these abatements nowhere near as necessary, because it is almost impossible to do projects right now without the things. And I do strongly believe the Detroit system hurts small and developers of color as well.
Absolutely right, Jer. And to kind of tie the two things back together, when we were talking about the Joe Louis site, I'm glad that Councilwoman Sheffield mentioned that about the abatements and that they were necessary and need to happen in the current situation, because my other point with the Joe Louis site was the fact that people who want some kind of avant-garde design or think this is uninspiring, you have to remember how expensive it is to build in Detroit right now. And what can you expect if you're not going to get major tax abatements and tax credits? You can only build so much. And I think that is also what the Joe Louis design is suffering from, is they have to make things work. It can't be the most expensive design. It has to be a little cookie cutter, because it's the only way the numbers will work where they can afford to build a 25-story tower on the riverfront.
I'm going to tie it to another story we haven't talked a ton about, which is over in West Village, where is that kind of like debate over the low-story apartment tower that would be built on a couple of sites that do have, more historic homes. A lot of the issue with it, I mean, there's multiple issues going on, but one of the issues is making sure that the new construction fits in with the neighborhood. I was recently on the road and I saw some new construction that would fit completely within West Village. It's just a question of money and taste, right? Like, it doesn't have to look like a more modern thing. If you want to set individual neighborhood regulations, I think that would be a great idea to make sure that new stuff fits in. And I mean, those other two buildings, they're small enough that if they really, really want them to be saved, you could move them or do something. But I think that's part of the issue is that you want things to kind of fit into a zone. That somewhere like a shipping container style thing works. Like where the shipping company is, it's completely fine where it is in Midtown, whatever, like that development or a few other places. But I understand the concerns in a West Village or in some other places of, hey, making sure that it fits the neighborhood. What I realized in my recent travels since the pandemic is that I don't hate new construction. I hate a lot of the choices that new construction makes in Detroit. And what I realized from doing a ton of research and background is that it's all driven by cost and that our cost structure doesn't make sense for us to do like those kind of like bigger investments to get a real brick facade, to get the setbacks, to get a thing that kind of mimics that kind of feel. Because in West Village, there's plenty of apartment buildings and double-story, triple-story things. But I understand why, like with a new construction thing, and I know there's other issues involved, I'm specifically addressing the looks. You can do good stuff new. It's done in other cities. We don't do them in Detroit, and we have to fix incentives to make sure that that happens.
You're absolutely right, Jared. And it's more expensive. We can do this stuff. We can be more creative with our design or more retro with our design or make it fit the neighborhood. But then that also means that, again, the numbers always have to work if you're a developer. I mean, this isn't charity. As a developer, if you're building these things, the numbers have to work and you have to be able to make money on these things. And so that all has to even out.
Yeah, a 1% margin is tiny, like with that Bedrock project. I do want to mention, too, there were some other community carve-outs, according to Robin Runyon. They need to dedicate at least 20% of the storefronts to small businesses in Detroit, $5 million for community-based projects through the Neighborhood Improvement Fund, $1 million in small business development support. Affordable housing in Bedrock properties needs to go up from 20 to 30%, moving the AMI level, down to 60%, and expand support for tech skills and digital equity. So basically, Sheffield got most of what she wanted in her kind of like letter that we covered before you took break.
I think they were all worthy things. And I think when we covered that before, we agreed that these were doable things. I don't think that Councilwoman Sheffield's, I don't want to say demands, but her asks, they were relatively reasonable for a project of this size. So I'm glad that they're coming to an agreement on that, and I'm glad that it's moving forward.
All right, a little bit of restaurant news. We'll keep moving here. Some quick hits. The Peterborough is temporarily closing. Now, I had done some reporting last week, and I actually called the restaurant and got some confirmation on that the idea that they were going to be closed permanently with very short notice. And a number of sources had said that they weren't going to get moving. They are now saying in press releases that came out a few days later on Monday that they are doing a temporary closure, that they're going to do some much needed utility repairs. I believe it. When you've had a restaurant open since like 2016, stuff needs work. But it does go to a greater question. I always hope that a place opens, and I hope that people get their jobs. And it looks like people are going to get reassigned to other Detroit Optimist Society properties, which is the ownership group. And that is awesome. And I'm really glad to hear that. That is the preferential option with these sorts of things. But they say it's going to be like fall, maybe October, for a reopened, reimagined Peterborough. I would like to believe them, but I also have this feeling that things are a little softer, especially since you don't have as many people coming downtown nowadays.
Yeah, definitely, Jer. I think that Peterborough occupies an interesting space, and unfortunately a space that's kind of disappearing. I'd kind of put it on the same level of like an Empire that we've talked about a lot in terms of closing, and other restaurants recently, even to an extent, Republic. Remember Republic closed? I think that these restaurants that opened up, Gold Cash Gold is another one. And they were really cool in 2016 when there was still a lot of growth, just lots of growth, because there was such a demand for restaurants, new cool restaurants in Detroit. The cuisine scene was like really, really hot, and everything was cool. Everything was new, and that was like the new thing. And Jared, I would come on and I would talk. We would spend time talking. Every month there was like the new spot.
Oh yeah, it's back when we were recording at the shipping company. And we'd come in, it was a fabulous time.
Yeah, and there was always like the new spot. And I feel like now there's just so many good spots. And so it's almost a kind of downside of success where you have all these really cool new restaurants. And if you're a Peterborough, and I liked Peterborough, I did, but it didn't really stand out. I asked myself, and I kind of put this to you, Jared, it's like, when was like a time where you're like, Peterborough, that's where I need to go? Not anywhere else, not fine dining, not more casual. I want to go to Peterborough because blank. And I couldn't fill in the blank there.
Interesting.
I hadn't gone to Peterborough, honestly, in like 4 years. It just had never really called to me because it wasn't like a special occasion restaurant, but it also wasn't like a super casual restaurant either. And I just think it kind of got lost in the shuffle of all of the bar and restaurant scene that's been really growing. And so I say that to say, I think that we're as strong as ever in terms of the quality and variety of dining and drinking options in Detroit, But because of that, places that don't stand out are going to probably continue to get lost in the shuffle, and that may mean closing.
I think this applies to downtown Detroit, but also the rest of Metro Detroit because we are so car dependent. I believe that if you're going to have a restaurant that gets a following and has a long life, you need to be a destination. You need to be worth it for people to drive across the region for, because although, yes, population density, you can look at different things, very rare do we have the neighborhood where you've got like the support like right around you. And it's important to be able to draw from across the region. And I think that also would serve you in good stead if you're in a Ferndale or a Troy or whatever. You know, you think about like whatever, what is it, the Phoenician up there that way? Mm-hmm. Been around forever. It's a destination, right? I think that that's going to be the key. But the thing is that that's a really, really high bar to meet, right? Mm-hmm. That's a difficult bar to meet. And I think sometimes what looks like softening, because I did a little poll and, you know, a large percentage of our audience thought the Detroit restaurant market was softening. I also wonder if it's not necessarily softening, but more along the lines of what you're talking about, where you need to hit a certain bar, and that if you don't hit that bar, it's going to be hard to make it because you've only got so much local traffic. Like I think about where the Peterborough sits, there aren't really that many apartment buildings. Like there are some areas around it, but you got a lot of students, but you don't have like the Chicago style or Columbus style density around there.
And not only that, you also have these great dining options where, you know, She-Wolf that's a destination. Let's talk, you know, that's the type of place that you go drive to. I'm sorry, you're not going to go to Peterborough if you were planning on going to She-Wolf. Like She-Wolf is the destination. Or Selden Standard. I mean, God bless Selden Standard. They are still just, you know, a stalwart of that area. These are places that have absolutely amazing cuisines. They're always doing something interesting with their menus. Grey Ghost is another one. It's kind of in that area. But those are the type of places that survive. So I would say if you are a restaurateur or someone looking to open a restaurant or expand, talk to, you know, Lombardo behind She-Wolf and the guys behind Grey Ghost. Talk to these people who have survived and really done something unique because they've got the secret sauce, honestly. They've been able to weather this storm and they'll do well. There's a way to do it, Jared, is I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a way to do it. There's people who have done this really well, but you got to bring it nowadays. You got to bring it now in the restaurant scene.
Speaking of destinations, one that I know is going to be an architectural one, Stanley Hong's Mania Cafe or Mania Cafe. I probably said that completely wrong. Anyway, it's this place built in the, you know, early 70s by a major black architect in Nathan Johnson. It is a amazing mid-century modernish building with kind of like a sign tower on it, kind of tucked away in Milwaukee Junction. I wanted to mention it really quick because the plans have been approved by the Historic District Commission to make this thing a go. So that looks like that's going to be coming up real soon too. So if you haven't seen the renderings on that, go to historicdetroit.org. They've got some of the story on this building. It's super cool. At least architecturally, this is definitely going to be a destination.
Yeah, this is such a cool building. I think most people don't even realize that something like this still exists. It looks like something that, you know, is from a bygone era because it frankly is. Yeah. And the fact that they're going to be restoring it to its glory, Milwaukee Junction really is the perfect place for this because they are the kind of epicenter for the hip, the cool, the trendy now. That's the place for all that in Detroit. They are the new Midtown. I think I've said that before, but to me, they're Midtown circa 2000, 9, 10, 11. So that's really cool. Glad that it's there and it's going to become a real cool destination. Looking forward to checking it out when it's open.
Before I let you go, I did want to mention that there is a family-friendly event happening in Greektown.
All right. What do we got, Jer? I got a family now, so I got to look out for these family-friendly events.
So on Saturday from noon to 8, the Greektown Heritage Festival is back for the first time in a couple of years. You've got like all kinds of food, music, programming, noon to 8, nice daytime event. It's something that I actually honestly want to check out. I think it's going to be good. And, I'm rooting for Greektown. I am. And so I want to see events that can bring people down and bring people in a way that's to check it out in a good way.
Yeah, I know. Greektown has had some issues late night and with some of the places there, but man, it's such a cool place to still hang out. They've got Monroe Street, when it's blocked off and when it's pedestrian friendly, it's just really cool. There's still some really great Greek entrepreneurs there and Greek establishments. This lamb roast where they're going to serve 500 pounds of lamb. That sounds fun. That'll be awesome. The food will be good. They'll have great music. Good chance to walk around, check out the interesting wonders of the apartment building that they're building from the top down.
Oh yeah, the Exchange. That's a wild one. We talked
check
about
out
that
the Exchange
Facebook.
while you're there. Yeah, check that out.
Yeah, for sure.
That'll be fun. I hope people go check that out.
Well, Devon O'Reilly, it's so good to talk to you.
It's good to be back, Jer. Good to talk to you. Looking forward to getting back into the swing of things.
And thank you all for listening. Thank you to everyone behind the scenes who make the show go. Thank you to our members at patreon.com/dailydetroit. Thank you for your support as we are rebuilding the studio. It is much appreciated, and thank you for the time. With that, I'm Jer Stays.
I'm Devon O'Reilly.
Remember that you are somebody, and we will see you around Detroit.